Well, it's great to be back. I gotta tell you, had a big steak dinner last night. Fantastic. Had some homemade cookies, chocolate chip. Also fantastic. Slept in my own bed. Man, was that great. And just feeling really rejuvenated here. My first day back at home. Even was able to pop in over at InfoWars and see the crew and do a segment of the War Room. Went on Alex Jones' show yesterday. A lot of moving parts. And really, I'm just hitting the ground running.
Okay. Two things. First of all, I get a Brad Pitt Fight Club vibe from Owen, and I love it. Stay tuned to the end of this. Stay tuned to the end of the stream, but wait for the end. There's a punchline to this video because the entire time it's going on, I'm wondering what the heck is Owen Shroyer doing, banging on the table. I was wondering. I thought I knew what it was. Just wait for it.
In fact, next week, I've already got a couple things lined up that I'm really excited about. I'm going to be going on with Tucker Carlson at the beginning of next week.
That's going to be amazing.
I'm going to be going on with Tim Pool.
That's going to be amazing.
At the end of next week. But I'm also really excited for Monday when I can go back to my normal show hosting duties, hosting the InfoWars War Room from 3 to 6 p.m. every day, where we're going to have a new show link up, owenshroyer.show. So a little easier to remember than perhaps the band.video/war room. But either way, a lot of big things coming, and I'm still just taking time to enjoy life this weekend. But with such a busy week ahead with Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and Tim Pool, and
he's not drinking Field of Greens. Spoiler alert.
and then my own hosting duties, plus a bunch of other stuff, dealing with legal stuff and probation, just a lot of busy stuff coming as I get free from jail. So I'm going to need to have my strength. And what better way to get my strength back than to slonk? We're going to go with 7 raw eggs today. The glass is full, so I'm going to need my strength back. I haven't been able to slonk eggs in jail, so let's get it going.
You can hear it. You can hear it going down. How do the yolks go down? How do you swallow a yolk?
Already feeling stronger. Let's go.
I swear to you, I've never done it before. I have no idea what goes into it. I have no idea what it tastes like. I have no idea what it feels like when a yolk goes down your throat and then it breaks the membrane of the yolk and I guess the yolky stuff gets splashed down your throat. I guarantee you I would vomit. Guaranteed. And that's not even that doesn't come with an asterisk, hashtag not a guarantee. Guaranteed. Every now and again in the winter in Canada, you get colds and you get phlegmy snot and you snort back and people cough up loogies. I gag when that happens. I imagine drinking 7 raw eggs would be like drinking an entire pint glass full of human snot. And yeah, all that to say, Owen, that's really for setting aside that I think texturally I can't imagine anything being any grosser. I would also immediately die for the fear of getting salmonella. I know it's irrational. I was brought up with a neurotic mother who imparted that neuroses on me. I was brought up thinking if you touched a raw egg into your mouth, you would instantaneously die. There was this place called the Orange Julep. It's like Orange Julius in the States, and they use raw eggs in their juice as one of the ingredients. We were brought up to fear, like the plague of death, eating raw eggs or uncooked eggs. Oh, so this is I hear your body absorbs the egg protein better when it's cooked. That's the only rationale that I've ever heard in terms of changing the proteins of meat when you cook them. Maybe that's the rationale to drinking raw eggs. Look, I've gotten off on a tangent in terms of the nastiness of slocking down 7 raw eggs. Owen Shroyer is out of jail. This announcement came last week when I was on the road to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Road trip. We did, I don't know how my kid does this. He likes sitting in a car for 8 to 12 hours and just, staring out the window and playing on an iPhone. We drove to Tuscaloosa, Alabama and back. Monday out, Friday back, or back by Friday, to watch the RNC debate. For those of you who had been watching the streams last week, this is all not new to you. It was amazing. We saw the debate. It was fantastic. I did my analysis of the debate on Friday's stream. we're back now. But as we were out of town and the news broke that Owen Shroyer was getting released early, Lord knows why, a week early. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, so to speak. But then it's like, he's not out until he's out. And now he's out. Back to work, back to the grind, back to the fight, the proverbial metaphorical fight for freedom. And good for him. Good on him. If I'm projecting, I think he looks a little tired. I think he might look a little skinnier than he did when he went in. But he's a free man, sort of, with some whatever limitations, and it's fantastic that he's out. Not only is he out, by the way, the news of the day. The news of the day. Look, I don't know. Do I get to take credit for this? I've made a bunch of predictions that never come to fruition, but excluding all the predictions I get wrong, I'm batting 100%. Friday morning, as I'm driving back from Tuscaloosa, we were actually driving back from Lake City, Florida, because we stopped overnight. I listened to Alex Jones on Tucker Carlson, a fantastic interview where I learned some things that I had to talk about subsequently. I said after that interview, Elon Musk is bringing Jones back within a month, not within the month, within a month, because that interview had everything that needed to be said publicly that would give Elon Musk the proverbial, not plausible deniability, but the excuse to bring Alex Jones back. Oh, I wasn't really fully aware of the fact that he was deplatformed, not for anything he said about Sandy Hook, not for anything he did on platform, but because of what he did. Was it Oliver Darcy, that dweeb? But for bullying Oliver Darcy, a man who's responsible for bullying countless other people, but for bullying Oliver Darcy in line at some convention, I forget where it was. That, in conjunction with Elon Musk's recent "go F yourself if you think you're going to blackmail me with money," because one of the rationales, the explanations, the justifications for not bringing Jones back was that it would create exposure and liability for Twitter. So I said within a month it's going to happen, and I was not aware that there was a poll being run by ALX. I'm not sure if it was at the same time or shortly thereafter. News of the day. Alex Jones back on Twitter, and his first engagement interaction with the Twitterverse after 5 years was retweeting an Andrew Tate tweet, which basically said, to honor Alex Jones coming back, to honor Elon Musk, tell a globalist today to go F themselves. I'll put the video up there. We are so back, or we're so back. There was a typo in it. So that's the good news. I mean, that's if anyone's looking for the preemptive white pill, that's the white pill. Whether or not the social media pressure campaign had anything, or raising awareness of Owen Shroyer being put in solitary for a week because of COVID and then for a month because of whatever, he's out early. So there's something of a white pill there, except, the white pill in tyranny is the cessation of the injury. Alex Jones is back. That is, when Elon Musk said, you think you're going to blackmail me with money? Go F yourself. That's as much of the middle finger that he can possibly give in real time. And so that's another white pill. The tide possibly is changing. There was a Twitter space today. I didn't get to listen to the whole thing. I didn't get to listen to it, but Alex Jones was on a Twitter space with Mario Nawfal, and Jack Posobiec was on it. I forget who the others were. And it was interesting. Is Elon using Jones to help save his company? It's an interesting tactic. I mean, whether or not he's doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, opportunistic reasons, you can always impute ill intentions even to the righteous decisions. I dare say it doesn't matter. It was a little later than it should have been. It doesn't jive with Elon's prior explanation for why he's not bringing back Alex Jones. Something about politicizing children, but when Piers Morgan does it, it's A-okay, but when Alex Jones does it, no. Well, it doesn't matter. Doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, you'll never be able to definitively prove it. And doing the right thing later than you should have, you can always say, why didn't you do it yesterday? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What's done cannot be undone. So 2 white pills. All right, now, but before we get into the show tonight, I'm going to run a poll in Twitter. Not Twitter, what's on? In YouTube, because I don't think we have the function for polls yet on Rumble. For those of you who don't know who I am, I've gotten back to the weekend car vlogs because I have a little extra time on the weekends when I'm sitting in a car waiting for the kids to go Christmas shopping at Target, because I'm not going into Target, as we say in Canada. Kids doing kickboxing, I'll sit in the car waiting and I'll make a vlog. So I did 2 vlogs this weekend. One was celebrating, commemorating, reporting on the former president of University of Pennsylvania, Liz Magill, who is no longer the president of University of Pennsylvania because she found it too difficult to categorically state that calling for genocide of any group, doesn't matter which group, is violative of a university's bullying and harassment policy. She couldn't bring herself to say it. It's an amazing thing. Too smart for her own good. It's context dependent. And I believe that the Dr. Gay from Harvard is next on the chopping block. Why it was Liz Magill who had to resign before Dr. Gay, because both their answers were equally horrid. I don't know. One can hypothesize. Maybe Liz Magill's really insidious smirk. And did anybody notice? It looked like Peter Strzok. When Peter Strzok was testifying, they had that same smirk. If someone should do a side-by-side. I said in my video from yesterday, she looked like Hillary Clinton. What difference does it make at this point? But her smirk, it's a psychopathic, arrogant, pompous, holier-than-thou, above-the-law smirk. Very much reminiscent of Peter Strzok during testimony. Someone should do a side-by-side. So I did that vlog. Today I did another vlog, which I shared the link of beforehand, about an Ohio police officer who is moving to another precinct, another office closer to home, and his chief, in whatever city it was in Ohio, is not letting him take his police canine, his service dog, not the services in disability, but the police dog, with him, to retire the dog maybe 1 to 3 years early. They've been together for 5 years. The man wants to move closer to home and wants to take the dog, retire the dog and take it with him. Take him with him. Take the dog with him. Police chief says, no, it's a tool. And there is no price that you can pay to take that tool with you, which makes even less sense. Because tools have a price, compensate for them. The guy wants to pay $10,000 for his own dog to take him. No, we're not doing that. So let's raise some awareness with that. But before I run the poll on YouTube and run over the first story before Barnes gets here, first of all, if you don't know who I am, Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned Florida rumbler. My real name is David Freiheit. The last name is Freedom in the German. My grandfather came from Poland. It was Freiheiter at the time, freedom fighter, but I guess he fled for freedom and didn't fight for freedom, so they dropped the ER, but not for that reason. Freiheit! We start on YouTube, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We end on YouTube, go over to Rumble, and when we're done with the stream, we go over to our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community, where everyone is above average, and we take questions, take tips, and have our wonderful after party. All right. You tell me. I got into a Twitter fight with Justin Hart. He's been on the channel before. I like him, and there's no but to that. I like him. But his judgment has been thoroughly compromised, I think, by his derangement against Trump or his support for DeSantis, which I think is questionable at this point in terms of sanity. Maybe I'm sensitive. Maybe I'm the jerk. I want everyone's take on this. And I'm going to run a poll. You're going to tell me, is Viva right? Is Viva wrong? But starting with the video that sparked it all, because it's a damn good video. In as much as Instagram and AI is the tool of the devil, it really allows you to add captions pretty accurately, pretty simply, without me spending 4 hours typing them myself. This is the video that I put out on Twitter and elsewhere about January 6th. It doesn't make sense by their own evidence. We had infiltrated with informants. We knew of the seditious conspiracy. We got a conviction based on the informants who were embedded. Testify.
FBI informants embedded with the two groups. And yet, we didn't know anything was going to happen on January 6th. And yet, we opened the doors and let them in. And there's video footage of it that was never disclosed to the public. And yet, the protesters, though there, were peaceful right up until the time the cops threw concussive grenades in, fired off rubber bullets, blasting people in the face, and then they got violent. That's called a setup, Dana. And what did they do with the events that ensued? They weaponized it to go after everyone and anyone who was there or in the
Testify, Viva.
They used it to classify basically half of the country as domestic terrorists that need to be surveilled. What did they do with it? They used it as a pretext to go after Donald Trump on indictments. They used it as a pretext to try to get Trump off the ballot. It was a setup, Dana Bash. It doesn't make sense by their own evidence. That's the video. I thought it was entirely accurate. I don't say things that are not accurate. Justin Hart comes out afterwards and then says, none of this is true. None of it. Not, I disagree with, maybe they didn't open the doors were magnetic, they didn't open them. Not, the guy who got blasted in the face with the rubber bullet, he was asking for it. No, none of this is true. To which I then replied, sassily, what did I say?
what did I say here? It was this one, I think. This is the one that got him upset. He says, why do I make it? Oh, I said, I don't understand why someone would shred their integrity over this particular issue. And then he says, why do you make it personal? And I said, you think I'm making it personal? If you come out to the world and say none of this is true, a condensed video, which I think all of it is factually true, and I provided the receipts of that memo, 21 TD 159, Google it. The evidence that was adduced during the Oath Keepers of the Proud Boys, informants embedded for weeks or months prior to the Capitol attack. All of it was true. Why do I make it? You're calling me a liar, ignorant, stupid, or dishonest to the world. I think that's personal. And that's the last we've interacted on that. And the question is this: am I right or am I wrong? We're going to run that poll in a second when I get Barnes in the house, who I see him in the back. I could have gone on for a lot longer with that, but maybe Barnes is going to have Robert, has Justin Hart lost his mind?
Well, I think what's interesting is, your video went viral. It was the first ever hush hush at vivabarneslaw.locals.com just a few days after January 6th, where talked about how this is likely what we're going to find out that this was. And in the infamous words of the now reinstated the return of the king, Alex Jones, to Twitter, January 6th was an inside job. And the evidence for it was there right then at the time. And this was our number one topic voted on by the board at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where everybody's above average, even the trolls, even the haters. In fact, I'll have a special. Amos Miller is putting together a Barnes box of some of his and my favorite products from Amos Miller's Organic Farm. And he's going to make it available at a special discount for starting off for the members of vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We'll extend it to everybody else next week, but everybody there can get it. And, of course, if you want to ask a question for us tonight, put a tip of $5 or more. That's a real cheap tip for access to a couple of famous lawyers. Going so famous that Justin Hart has to tell lies about January 6th. But because it was an inside job. It was. The evidence of it is accumulating. At this point, it is indisputable by anybody acting in good faith.
But then I get neurotic. Like, okay, maybe. When was it the statement classifying half the country as domestic terrorists? Okay, that's a little hyperbolic, but they did it pretty much. Like, if
that's
you were
what they did. I mean, not only that. I mean, it was an inside job from day one that you could know, because if you look at the telltale signs of something that's an inside job, one of the key things you look for is unusual lapses in security and unusual behavior by those involved in the security apparatus. Both of those were abundant, and frankly, it was abundant at the time. Just we didn't know the degree and the scale and the scope of it. I said that my guess is over time we would discover that January 6th was filled with informants, infiltrators, and instigators. I knew just because of the security lapse that it was an inside job, because that couldn't have happened. But you have 2,500 Capitol Police. You have over 10,000 National Guard available that Trump said should be made available at the Capitol on that day. The National Guard is called off by the D.C. mayor, and Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell issue variations of stand-down orders to the Capitol Police and how they were stationed. Now we know that the other Capitol Police were all part of the informant, infiltrator, instigator operation. Some were letting people in. Others were provoking things by attacking crowds, throwing old ladies down the steps, throwing sound grenades into the middle of a crowd, crowding people in, telling them to go over here, then telling them they couldn't be there with nowhere to go, and then starting to attack them, escorting some through the Capitol all the way through. Those people later get charged with crimes. Who did nothing, who stayed right within the lines of being directed by Capitol Police. And that doesn't even get to the Ray Epps', the informant. Over at this point, according to members of Congress, according to people who've seen the data, according to people who've seen the videotapes, you had hundreds of undercover informants, infiltrators, and instigators in that crowd, trying to get the crowd to do things that were not in their interest to try to provoke a response and a reaction. You have the cover-up of the cop who shot an unarmed woman right in her chest with no legal consequence. That's just some of the examples of what took place there. They still haven't explained the fake bomber. the guy who put fake bombs at the DNC headquarters and other places. They've never gone after him. They've never put him on blast. They've never said where he's at. Why was the bomb fake? Well, I mean, this screams inside job. And if you can't see it, you're somebody like Justin Hart, who's deep into the dissent camp, who can't acknowledge anything that is favorable to Donald Trump.
The problem is that people on both sides, in the sense that the Democrats are exploiting this for political purposes, as is the DeSantis camp. And that's what really, really irks me about all of it. But Robert, look, everyone...
The DeSantis camp is useless, just like DeSantis. The guy's got no future. I mean, his wife, she was so busy measuring the drapes in the White House, she's starting to suffer a clear mental breakdown that she's now realizing the White House, bye-bye. The closest she's going to get is a tour if Trump lets her walk through next time when he's back in. She's out there telling Iowans to illegally vote, non-Iowans to come to Iowa and illegally participate in the Iowa caucus process. The Republican Party and a bunch of people had to put out and saying, no, by the way, you legally can't do that. Only Iowa residents can participate. She's inducing massive voter fraud. No wonder the DeSantis camp doesn't think anything went wrong with the 2020 election. They're trying to engage in and elicit it right now. So these people are not credible anymore. They have no credibility. It's like neocon war Karen Nikki Haley has no credibility after that last debate, to the degree she ever had it before. But anybody who's in denial about this is one of the points Mike Cernovich has been making about the various Palestinian apologists. He's like, all right, so these people are deeply bothered by people being railroaded in a criminal case. Well, what have they said about January 6th? And you dig in, and of course, 95% of them have said nothing about January 6th. They're very hypocritical and selective, probably because you scratch. Yeah, it's like all the speech debate going on. Is it true you can be anti-Israel without being anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic? Absolutely. But is it also true that almost everybody who's anti-Israel, you scratch the surface and the Jew hatred comes pouring out?
Right.
Yes, it is.
No, and the amazing thing is, like,
at the same time,
people who are now saying, so there are some people out saying that that woman, Liz McGill, she shouldn't have been forced to resign because she's protecting free speech, and yet those are the
all about free speech.
Well, no, but those
the equity. Now, I think there are issues there that we should debate, but in honor of those people, I thought I should pick a non-controversial book tonight. So this book is entitled "Christian Slaves, Muslim Masters," written about the history of the long history of people suddenly are concerned with colonization and colonialism and all this other stuff they throw at me in the Israel debate. Well, nobody's been a bigger imperialist or colonizer in religious history around the globe than the Islam religion and those who practice it and the Muslims. But it's a little good reminder for all those wokesters that, that think what America did? America didn't invent slavery. America invented the end of slavery. Mm-hmm. Americans died to end slavery. That's America's history on slavery. By contrast, I don't think, have they ever apologized yet out of those Islamic countries for the long, notorious history of Islam's core support, sponsorship, and promotion of massive slave trade long before the West and long after the West? I don't think so.
Well,
it's a good book, by the way. It's an Ohio State Italian history professor. And he just he didn't even know this history. And so he dug in. This isn't like some whack job that Norman Finkelstein will testify for that denies the Holocaust. It's not one of those kind of people. This guy's a legit historian. He doesn't have really a bone. He just say historically, there's a reason why Thomas Jefferson at the beginning of our country is talking about the Barbary pirates and the concern over the slave trade of North Africa. And that all ties into the Islamic slave trade. And it's one of those things politically that they just don't like to talk about in the wokester universities of today. Well, they clearly don't care about free speech. That doesn't mean that some people aren't going too far in wanting to obliterate the line.
No, well, no question about that. I was just going to say also, talking about the slave trade and, the concern for it culturally, I believe it's alive and well now, thanks to Hillary Clinton et al. In Libya, which, don't talk about it. It's politically inconvenient as well. Yeah. But actually, just before I forget, Robert, because I want to just, everyone should know the homework that's out there. Google 21TD159. This is the memo, the internal memo that Yogananda Pittman had in D.C. in December, detailing what they knew was coming in terms of a risk.
It's Capitol Police people who are testifying this was an inside job, including the former deputy chief. I mean, so it's like, that this is not, when you're out there pretending, how bad do you have to be into the dissent world when you're out there pretending that the January 6th, they sound like the Fox people 15, 20 years ago towards Alex Jones, when he was saying 9/11 is not what you guys are selling it as, that at a minimum, there's complicity by the U.S. government, which we all now know, as Vivek has been saying. He's like, a lot of this is not really controversial. The CIA knew things that they hid. The State Department knew things that they hid. The Bush administration knew things that they hid. They misused it and abused its power of this shocking trauma to do surveillance, which right now is pending before Congress. Credit to, and like, here's where the pro-Israeli crowd goes way too far. Is it the case that a lot of these Palestinian groups want to make life miserable for Jewish kids on college campuses and anyone who's pro-Israel? Yeah, they've said so themselves. This is what Greenwald and Mate and Tracy and the rest don't really honestly forthcomingly talk about. At the same time, are there people on the pro-Israel side who are trying to use this as a new excuse for censorship? Clearly there is, because we'll talk about this with the Trump gag order. There's a line. We've talked about it in the drafting the Rumble rules. There's a line. These are private universities, the Ivy League. They're not governed by First Amendment limitations. So I'm not making that argument. But I'm saying if you care about robust free speech as much as practicable on a college campus, there's an easy line between stalking, harassment behavior, and legally protected speech behavior. Some of the groups are deliberately targeting Jewish kids and pro-Israel kids, but particularly Jewish kids for harassment purposes. That's what should be punished. Some of it is just speech that shouldn't be punished or targeted. And like for people like Joel Pollack at Breitbart, and people at AIPAC and some of these other groups, if you're targeting Thomas Massey, you've lost the script, right? This is not an anti-Jewish guy at all. This is a guy who opposes various forms of foreign aid everywhere, opposes foreign intervention everywhere. But he's one of the best liberty advocates in all of Congress. If you're attacking him, Joel Pollack, at Breitbart and elsewhere, people are going to think you're more loyal to Israel than America, and you're going to lose the script, and you're going to lose supporters, and you're going to lose sympathizers on those who do recognize that large parts of the Palestinian cause are trying to do woke Antifa-style tactics of making life miserable, and then just want to say, oh, it's just speech. It's just speech if you're doing it to persuade. It's not just speech if you're trying to target somebody for harassment on a college campus because of their religious or other identity. And that's what a bunch of them are doing. And the Ivy League wants to pretend otherwise because their wokesters have turned on them. The revolution is chopping off its own. And this is what happens when you let a bunch of this is what Cernovich has been talking about. It's like, all these pro-Palestinian crowd, just listen to them or on any other topic. These are not people you want to be associated with. These are people that you don't want to be affiliated with. They're lying, fraudulent hypocrites 9 out of 10 times, including people like Scott Horton, who just starts frothing at the mouth about the Zionists, and he can't be reasonable about anything. Just watch his debate with Will Chamberlain and Tim Pool, just like his discussion with you. Just impossible to be there. But we got to stake with a line. If it's stalking or harassment, illegal. If it's just persuasive speech, it's not illegal. Let's draw that line, and somehow nobody can do it either on the left or the right, depending on whether it's Trump or Israel. It's at issue.
Well, this is where the question gets muddied in the waters, where they say, okay, First Amendment issues versus campus policy. And so some people are saying, look, if it's not illegal, then it should be awful but lawful, calling for the genocide of an identifiable group. If it's not illegal, I'm not sure. Robert, is overt calls...
no, it's not illegal. These private universities can absolutely limit speech. There's no question about that. So the question... There's sometimes that something might be tied in to things being a public forum in select circumstances, but they absolutely can. And within free speech restriction, like public universities and public schools, which are governed by speech restrictions, Ivy League's not, if it interferes with their educational duties, they can do it. And that's where it's like the suit that we talked about, the Jewish kids against Columbia. There was places where they were clearly on the right side, where they had been, where this was stalking behavior, harassing behavior. We're going to go to a Jewish group and do this. And those conservatives have been the victim of this. The reason, like Greenwald and Tracy and these other people, don't understand why there hasn't been more free speech outcry against the hearings and so forth. it's because the groups they're aligned with are the groups that, under the guise of speech, stalk and harass people into making life miserable on campus, and with Antifa type tactics that nobody really thinks. Anybody that knows these groups knows they're not there to do this speech, right? You could go out, if you're trying to do persuasive speech, you would not chant from the river to the sea. If you wanted to be persuasive speech in America, you would not chant Intifada today, Intifada forever. These are not things you would do. And I get people pretending, oh, who knows what from river to the sea means? Who knows what it possibly means? Everybody knows what it means, especially those who are chanting it. From river to the sea is calling for the genocide of all Jews in Israel. That's what it means. You don't hear any Israelis saying that about Gaza. They're accused of doing it in Gaza, but they aren't cheering it or chanting it.
I don't know. I'm sure some people
that isn't a genocidal chant, but that can be free speech on a public university campus. The limit, even on speech is not protected on a private university campus. But if it interferes with their duties, this is where if you do it in a classroom, if you do it at other students or groups, if you go to a student's dorm to do it, which, by the way, they all do, these pro-Palestinian groups, they brag about it. They say that's their goal and objective. That's what makes it an unusual First Amendment situation. This is not just, hey, let's suppress speech because we don't like anti-Israel speech. There's some people trying to do that, trying to misuse what's happening into that. But that's not the core of the issue. The core of the issue is they target Jewish kids for harassment, stalking, and any pro-Israel, just like they've been stalking conservative kids for the last decade on these campuses, making life miserable if you hold a view they don't want you to hold. And that's very different than trying to be persuasive and going to the Yale Political Union and giving your side. That's not what they're doing 9 times out of 10. But that's also where we should all be drawing the line, whether it's private campuses or public. We should be encouraging robust debate that says you can't use this to stalk and harass. You can engage in whatever debate dialogue you want to, even horrendous and offensive dialogue and debate. And that line is being obliterated. It's being obliterated in the Trump gag order context too. So, different groups, different incentives, different motives. But there's a legitimate concern that the speech is just a thinly disguise for harassment and stalking, which has never been legal. And calling for genocide can be legal. Going up to the group to try to induce a specific individual to feel a sense of fear because you're calling for their genocide, that's not legal. That's always been a line. And many of these pro-Palestinian groups explicitly say their goal is to go past that line.
It's interesting. I would have even given a more gray zone. And I know the historical meaning to from the river to the sea when people say it. Some might say that that's still an analogy, a metaphor for genocide, for lack of a better word. But where someone was, the woman, Liz McGill, answering the question. Well, if it's followed up with action, genocide, threats of genocide, and I mean overt death to this entire group, fill in the blank. It doesn't have to be Jews. It could be blacks, gays, trans. And something tells me if it were genocide against trans, she would have had a very quick answer to that. Yeah. But when someone says,
I agree with you there. Now, what she was doing, the correct First Amendment interpretation, the problem all these Ivy League people have is they don't believe in the First Amendment. Every single one of them has obliterated the First Amendment on their campus. They got into their positions by doing it. That's why they have no credibility on that. And that's why they were caught in the catch-22. They didn't want to offend their big Arab donors. They didn't want to offend their woke lefties on campus. They wanted to pretend they're free speech without admitting things that show that they don't care at all about free speech because they've been obliterating it for a decade on campus, got to their positions by doing so. The free speech position would require imminent incitement. And so merely calling for genocide, I've seen some people suggest that calling for genocide is not protected. Dershowitz has acknowledged, yes, it is. He doesn't think on private campuses, at college campuses, it should be for reasons it interferes with a whole bunch of things. That's his argument.
On the First Amendment issue, not on the school policy issue.
Correct. He thinks that there should be a difference between that with a private, because private university is not governed by First Amendment. And he thinks that robust debate should have certain limits on a college campus in order to make the debate actually effective. And that goes where the First Amendment cannot. What she was answering is the First Amendment does require imminent incitement. And I see people saying that calling for genocide is not First Amendment protected. Yes, it is. When is it not protected? If you're going up and trying to induce fear in someone right there or present. So I'll give it the classic example is the famous Klan case. So when they're doing it at a Klan rally, they're calling for direct violence against black citizens, the Supreme Court said, that's protected because there was no imminent incitement, no incitement of imminent lawless action. By contrast, if they were doing it in a black neighborhood, if they were doing it at a black community event, if they were doing it for the purpose of and with the likely impact of inducing fear in a person that they're about to get attacked, then it's no longer protected. It has to have that imminent risk of lawless action. It's the same thing the D.C. Circuit had tried to obliterate in the Trump gag order case, that is the imminent incitement requirement part. They at least mostly gutted the gag order, but that's the difference. The question is that applicable to a college campus? On a college campus, they can go further because it's okay to limit speech if it's necessary to promote and protect their educational mission. So that's where they could say, okay, where the problem all these professors had is they've banned a speech that they call hate speech they don't like for a bunch of political reasons. It's just not calling for the mass murder of a group of people based on their religion, it turns out, because it's a politically unprotected religion. Particularly, it's the religion on the opposite side of a lot of their big donors from the Arab Muslim world, and especially Qatar. And that's the other dirty little secret here. So, I mean, that's the money war that's going on between big pro-Israel donors. They're just now stepping up, recognizing how nefarious the Arab money that's poured in, that's been as nefarious as the Chinese money into American universities over the past decade.
Well, it's a shame that Liz McGill can't think as fast on her feet as you can. But the issue there was the question was not about First Amendment rights on the campus. It was about violating campus policy, whether or not calling for the genocide of Jews or anyone violates the policy. I want to bring this up because I don't think most people know exactly what Brandenburg or whoever
we're marching through a Jewish community.
True.
And whether or not that could have been the grounds. And to Dershowitz's credit, he defended the Nazis. So that's where he has much more credibility to me on this topic than most others. But if the question, it's like there you have a public community, not the same as a college campus where you've invited members that you have a certain duty to protect. That's not true for just the random. There is no broad duty to protect on the government. There is in the context of universities. There's an implicit contractual obligation under their rules and policies and under their tuition. This is part of the Columbia lawsuit. So that's where there's a bit of a difference between that and just whether Skokie has to say, you can march, but just not through that neighborhood. Well, they may have, if Skokie had said, you can't march through that neighborhood because that is the highest per capita incidence of Holocaust victims in America, and we think you're doing this in order to terrorize those individuals. They may have been constitutionally okay if they had limited it in that way. That didn't end up being the issue, though.
I want to bring up the statement because I think people think it was worse than it was. This is the quote that was at issue. This is an organizers' meeting. We have quite a few members here today. We're not a revengeant organization, but if our president, our Congress, our Supreme Court continues to suppress the white Caucasian race, it's possible that there might have to be some revengeance taken. And so the revengeance, I don't even know if that's a word. So I mean, even to me, like that's.
You mean a Klansman can't speak English?
No. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's been added to the Urban Dictionary since. That to me, that's black and white. That obviously has to be
dictionary. Only
pronunciation, Robert.
Yeah, exactly.
That to me is objectively must be tolerated exercise of free speech. Calling for the genocide, even if it's from the river to the sea, I could be allowed to think that most people don't know what it means.
Intifada today, Intifada forever.
Yeah,
or saying they're part of the October 7th operation, using that using that tags, or putting. Like not only BLM, but a bunch of Palestinian groups on campus did, handing out pamphlets with those gliders that came in and terrorized Jews on October 7th. That's stuff that's, they're really, from a university perspective, you can absolutely ban that constitutionally because of the nature of the campus and the inflammatory nature of that could reasonably lead someone to believe. It would be like, for example, Klan activity has almost always been banned on college campuses, right? And so it's the same grounds, right? So is putting up a cross in a public event protected speech? A burning cross can be. Not when you put it on somebody's lawn, it isn't. Then it's a crime because that's intended to intimidate and terrorize a person. It generally is prohibited on college campuses because college campuses have a right to protect their educational purpose and their obligation to protect their kids on campus. So that's where there really is a line. And I'm just urging people on the right to be consistent about where that line is. Don't blur it because you have an excuse now to bash people that are on the anti-Israeli side of the aisle. That's where we should stay with the line, whichever side, the free speech line, and including the free speech on college campus line, which I agree is different. But there's still a line there that we can maintain that protects robust speech on campuses without interfering with their educational mission and without unduly limiting speech.
Robert, I just was about to do one thing. Oh, yes. Okay, we're going to get ready to go on over to Rumble. Before then, you're going to give us the list of items. But hold on. I noticed someone said something in the chat. Love you both. I can't watch when you go to Rumble. Rumble will not let me watch live streams. The alternative to that, come over to Locals. Locals has its own separate separate server platform based whatever for live streams. So for whatever the reason, if you don't like Rumble, I would say get used to it, and they're going to working out the glitches, but come over to Locals, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Robert, I don't know if that was number one on our list, but what do we have on the list of the menu for tonight?
We got a big win for Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. Getting access to the ballot and protecting everybody else's access to the ballot in the process. A certain Hunter Biden indicted. So we got that. State Department. The sophistication of the State Department censorship apparatus. They did in secret against Trump while Trump was in the White House and now continued unabated and has been exposed by a range of other suits, has led to Attorney General Paxton, the Federalist, and the Daily Wire bringing suit in Texas based on, by the way, a Robert Kennedy created theory of this being a First Amendment violation. So we're seeing those cases, the logic of those cases extend and expand into the legal universe. We got Trump seeking a stay, finally, but that's a good sign in the D.C. circuit. We got the gag order that was mostly eliminated. There's a part of the gag order that he can appeal to the Supreme Court where if they take it, he can still get reversal. I'll explain what the court is trying to get away with and where there's a problem. And Trump first read it and thought that he was still gagged. If you understand what the gag order's limitations are, not really. It basically court staff's about all. And we got the New York trial, being extraordinary evidence in the New York trial.
It's unbelievable that it's still going on and that, I don't know, heads have not rolled. Metaphorically speaking, politically speaking. Sorry.
We covered the top topic, which was going to be topic number 6, the January 6th setup. Austin judges, including a certain infamous Austin judge the audience might be familiar with, is ordering abortions to be done in Texas against Texas law. Texas Supreme Court is having to step in. In Mexico, they got problems with their judges, so they're recommending a reform. And where do they recommend the reform? First Amendment case, Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, gun dealers being forced to hand out suicide prevention materials before they're allowed to sell a gun. The NCAA, the National Communist Against Athletes, is being sued again over its transfer portal. This time, the attorney generals are bringing the suit. Sarah Silverman continues her battle on behalf of a wide range of copyright folks against artificial intelligence. Those cases took a major setback over the last 2 weeks. And the Screen Actors Guild, more popularly known as the Film Actors Guild with South Park.
I see.
Has been sued over the vaccine mandate by a conscientious member. So those are our 12 topics for tonight.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'll give the links out one more time before we head on over. Actually, let me do some super chats before I forget because I haven't gotten to any of them yet. Okay, I will go fast. Cheryl Gage, doing 5 pull-ups while holding your bike between your legs. Not bad for an old guy. The bike has clips on it, so the bike, I don't actually have to press it. It's just clipped into my shoes. And I did actually more. The only reason I only did 5 was because that was my third take. Lower your mic volume a bit. Well, it's well too late for that. I'm not going to touch it. The local said it was good. I'm going to leave it as is. The chemicals are turning the freaking frogs gay, says not a banned account. Sorry, the last one was from Steve Britton. Forbes, FBI and other agencies paid informants $548 million in recent years, with many committing authorized crimes. Adam Andrzejewski, November 18, 2021. Oh, we saw it in the Gretchen Whitmer case, how much they were paying their informants. Will Trump retaliate against January 6 investigators? Retaliate's not the right word. Will he seek justice? We'll see. Isn't a genocidal that was from Not a Band account. Isn't a genocidal chant a call for violence and therefore illegal? We've talked about that. Ian?
Yes, the imminent incitement component or the direct harassment component.
I got this one, Poke Rob. And then we got after 9/11, a lot of people said, screw him and let
a lot of people did say bad, dumb things. Yeah.
Viva, was that calling for genocide too, or was it an expression of exacerbation? I'm not sure
what position of power they were in. If they were at the Defense Department, then that's a whole different thing than if it's Joe Blow.
Post Talk says, where is the specific place I can find the evidence of voter fraud in Georgia? I'd like to see it for myself.
Just Trump's election contest. Find the 400-plus page complaint and all the attached affidavits. That's the best place.
And we got campus policy like community policies at Google, YouTube, and formerly Twitter. Says Lynn Westover. I barely recognize him with his clean-shaven face in that older picture. Lynn, nice to see you again. Just got back from a concert I was singing in, and I'm almost caught up at 2X. The concert was great, and so is this. Best of both worlds. Okay, now we're going to go over to Rumble, and if you don't want to go there for whatever the reason, Locals link incoming, and then we're ending on YouTube, or as it's otherwise known, CommieTube. That's it. Leaving. 3, 2... Hold on one second. How do I do this? Why do I have a brain fart?